Good evening and welcome to This Week in 60 Minutes. The rule of law and constitutional governance are fundamental Commonwealth values to which Guyana has subscribed. This was the view of the Commonwealth Secretary General, Baroness Patricia Scotland, in a statement earlier this week, who made it clear that Guyana is currently under unconstitutional rule. Good evening, I am Roodi Balgobin and welcome to all our viewers.
Also, thank you for those joining via our Facebook live stream. I'm Nalini. Today marks day 7 of Guyana being under unconstitutional rule. We will be looking at the impact of this on our nation and our people.
This evening we have much to discuss, given all that has been happening. I am Juan Ejil Jr., and we hope you'll stay with us, and I hope you will stay with us as we go through what the first week of a dictatorship has brought to the Guyanese people. And one of the things that it has brought is international condemnation. Now, over the past 7 days, we have seen statements from the civil society groups and the international community condemning the fact that the illegal president, Mr. David Granger, has moved Guyana into unconstitutional rule. Representatives from the United States of America, Britain, and the European Union have declared that the caretaker APNU-AFC coalition government is in breach of the country's constitution and called on Granger to, quote-unquote, set an elections date immediately or possibly face a cutoff of development funding. Now, the diplomats also said, and I'll quote, "The situation comes at a great cost to the people of Guyana. The prevailing political uncertainty undermines Guyanese institutions. It compromises economic opportunities and delays development. It also hinders our ability to support Guyana's development needs," unquote. And then we saw as well the Commonwealth Secretary General, they have also made a statement, and this is what they said. I quote, "The rule of law and constitutional governance are fundamental Commonwealth values to which Guyana has subscribed. In this regard, and in accordance with the ruling of the CCJ, a general election in Guyana is now constitutionally overdue. General elections should be held in accordance with the unambiguous constitutional imperative to do so," unquote. So the Commonwealth, which is a makeup of about 53 nations, they would have also issued this statement, a clear statement to the APNU-AFC fallen coalition government. Now, also locally, guys, we saw a number of statements coming from a lot of local organizations which would have echoed similar sentiments. And a few would have come from, and I would say, the Guyana Bar Association. I just want to read some of what that would have said. I quote, this is one of the paragraphs. I quote, "By failing to abide by the clear and unambiguous terms of the Constitution, the government of Guyana has abdicated its responsibility, violated the Constitution, is operating outside of the rule of law, and in breach of internationally recognized standards of democracy," unquote.
What I found interesting
Yes.
about the Bar Association's bit
Yes.
was that the AG denounced it despite
Yes.
this all being a brotherhood of our lawyers together.
That's correct. Well, this government is clearly, they're going against everything that is coming, that is logical, that is reasonable. They're actually still saying that they're not illegal.
Mhm.
They're saying that they don't have to resign. And now they're saying that basically they can call elections whenever they have the will to
think
do
that's
so.
what the-
I
Different
think
copy of the Constitution.
everyone by now in Guyana don't listen to the Attorney General, so I think, well, the former Attorney General, that we're safe from that.
Basil Williams.
Yes, Mr.
Let's be very
Williams.
clear about which former Attorney General.
So we saw, apart from the lawyers in our country, we saw the business community would have also issued some statements. We saw one coming from the Guyana Chamber of Commerce and Industry, as well as the private sector Commission would have also issued, and the FITUG has also issued, and the International Center for Democracy.
Mhm.
But moreover, apart from the business and the professional side of our nation,
Mhm.
we saw the religious groups have now made their voices heard on this issue.
Mhm.
We saw a statement from the Dharmic Sabha. Actually, before we came on the program, I saw a statement from the Dharmic Sabha in Guyana.
Okay.
I saw one from the CIOG
Mhm.
and one from the Zadok Ministers Fellowship, which is a makeup of churches, over 100 Christian churches in Guyana. So all of these organizations are calling on the president to do what he needs to do and what he should have done a very, very long time ago, which is to call the election. And it's surprising that this government, it's almost falling on deaf ears.
Like you see the civil side and the business side coming out and saying that, but now when the religious comes out and say it too, it's like, okay.
Enough is enough, basically. Enough is enough.
It would seem there's only the coalition government that seem to think that they are still on the constitutional, they have constitutional power over Guyana. They are the only ones that fail to realize that with the effect of the CCJ ruling, that they have lost all constitutional power.
Yes,
as you pointed out, the Commonwealth said that Guyana is now under unconstitutional rule.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. What I find interesting though of all of this is that CARICOM has remained silent. In July, Secretary General of CARICOM, Aaron LaRock, in late July 2019 said, "We will continue to monitor everything very, very closely. There has been a process that has been ongoing since the vote of no confidence, and we've seen that the process has worked so far in the sense that the CCJ has delivered its judgment and its consequential orders." So what's interesting there is the consequential orders are still not being followed. And he continues in this statement, and this was in July, and at this point we have no other statement from him. "We, CARICOM, are very much engaged. I'm in touch and will continue to be in touch with the relative parties involved. I've spoken to both of them," he referring to the president and the opposition leader. He had a phone call conversation with the president and he met the opposition leader. "CARICOM does not interfere unless there is democratic and judicial process breakdown." Well, there is clearly a democratic and judicial breakdown. We're now under a constitutional rule, right?
Yes.
There's a breakdown with the judicial process because the CCJ's orders aren't being followed.
Of course.
And then when you look at the democratic process, you see the breakdown of it because even the Commonwealth says this, you have an unconstitutional rule.
Exactly.
And that's 53 countries and come together to create that.
Well, what is very interesting is their position. We'd just like to know what is CARICOM's position on the issue, because as you pointed out, Nalini did say that once the democratic and judicial process breaks down, then they would intervene. And clearly that has happened. Moreover, I'd just like to say that we need all stakeholders on board to reject and object to any move that would solidify a dictatorship in Guyana.
Yes, we do.
Because what is common and known throughout the world is that once you no longer enjoy a government that adheres to the Constitution and adheres to the principles and morals of democracy, you're living in a dictatorship. No one wants to live in a dictatorship, especially in 2019. So,
Especially,
so I'm basically calling on all Guyanese that they must take a stand on this position. So,
well, I want to just, before we continue on and calling on more Guyanese too, is that we want to point out the fact that CARICOM is located here, right?
Yeah, I know. The CARICOM, they are based here in Guyana, so it's not like they have to get...
taxpayer dollars are part of their fundings and so forth. So, would it be nice if CARICOM could come out and say something, or at least a few head of states from the various Caribbean nations, or instead of us having all the other international partners versus.
I think it's important for CARICOM to say something because they are part and parcel of the CCJ, because the CCJ is a regional court which we subscribe to, and currently they are not all CARICOM countries subscribe to the CCJ. There's still jurisdiction which uses the Privy Council in England and all of that.
I think the CCJ wants them all to subscribe.
Exactly. Now, if that is the general idea, I think that is important for CARICOM to come out and say something, especially in light of a very clear, cannot stress how much it is clear, ruling from the CCJ and consequential orders. They're extremely clear. If you give it to any, well, I would say primary 4, I don't know what they call it now, student that is about to write their comments, grade 6, the national grade 6, to read these judgments, there's no ambiguous language there. They can read it and understand it. So it shocks me that certain sections of Guyana are still arguing that, the government is constitutional and they have a right to do whatever they're doing. Is on that premise, I would just like to call on all Guyanese to take a stand against this dictatorship, which I deem a dictatorship that is now taking over Guyana. It is important that everyone take the stand because a lot is at stake here. It's not
Yes.
only our country and the way we're perceived internationally, but more fundamentally, it is our human rights being eroded on a daily basis. It is the breakdown of democracy in the country, and the erosion of rule of law.
Yes, and we did have multiple discussions in weeks past about
Mhm.
the importance of all Guyanese taking a stance against what is going on in their country. And we did say before that protesting is not the only way to do so. Writing a letter in the newspaper is not the only way to do so.
Mhm.
It starts by
Civil
you
disobedience
just
is not the only way to
yes,
do it.
it's not the only way. All you need to do is just ensure that you speak with your neighbors, speak with your families, ensure that anywhere you go, in your social groups, in your youth meetings, wherever you go, just ensure that your voice is being heard there. Have discussions and really discuss the implications of this government and the way, and this fallen government and the way that it chooses to react to clear instructions, because you have a responsibility, not just to yourself, but to your brother, to your sister. You have a responsibility to your neighbor, to the future generations, to your children, and their children as well, to really take a stand, to really ensure that that a dictatorship is not allowed to be created in this country. That is our responsibility as Guyanese. We have to ensure to guard our
I think
constitution.
we're past the point of dictatorship being created. We are living in a dictatorship. Just take a
Yes.
stand to ensure we're not forced to live in it for a longer period
Yes.
than necessary.
Very important distinction there. And this leads me to what has been taking place over the past week, where you have persons peacefully protesting, and what I like the development of a police state. The definition of a police state is very clear, but for our viewers, I'll just like to go through the Merriam-Webster's definition of a police state very briefly. And you can see it there on your screen, but I'll also go through it for those of you who may not be able to view it. A police state is a political unit characterized by regressive governmental control of political, economic, and social life, usually by an arbitrary exercise of power by police, and especially secret police in place of regular operations of administrative and judicial organs of the government, according to publicly known legal processes. So whenever you see that the police are taking political directions and they're being repressive to the citizens of the nation exercising their democratic rights, that is termed a police state. Now, on Monday, the 23rd of September, the Private Sector Commission, in their statement, said, and I quote, "The Private Sector Commission wishes, however, to express its deep concerns that GCOM's decision is in contravention of the constitutional obligation of GCOM to have been ready to conduct elections no later than 3 months after the ruling of the CCJ on June 18, 2019, resulting in the APNU-AFC coalition remaining in office by relying upon the disciplined services to exercise its authority." We have seen also the images of the response to peaceful protesters, and if you look at your screen there now, that is the peaceful protest that was taking place just in front of the Marriott, the Pegasus Hotel, where President David Granger was the chief guest at a GMSA dinner where he delivered his speech. And persons gathered there just to register their concern. What you're looking at right now on your screen is images of yesterday, where the president barricaded sections of Georgetown leading towards the office of the president, where he was meeting with the illegal cabinet, which should have resigned months ago.
And this morning he had State House all locked off too.
Yes, and just this morning there was also all sections within Georgetown leading towards the State House also heavily barricaded with riot police. Currently on your screen you're looking at the Arthur Chung Convention Center. These are also some more images of the riot squad there,
Yes.
barricading persons at a peaceful candlelight vigil.
Basically blocking them off, Roodi. I was there, and I think you were there as well.
Yes, I was.
And what we saw there is basically the police would have received instructions not to allow them to
Yeah,
move
so the
forward.
PPP on the
Yeah.
weekend released a press statement on the instructions being handed down to the police force. Ranks of the Guyana Security Service are reminded they have an obligation to uphold the Constitution of Guyana by the People's Progressive Party. So I'm going to read to you what the PPP statement actually said, a part of it. We remind the Guyana Police Force, and indeed every public servant, public officer, and holder of statutory and constitutional offices, that their allegiance is to the Constitution. And by virtue of that very Constitution, the legitimate tenure of the government of Guyana has come to an end. Therefore, those who are currently clinging to the reins of governmental office are doing so unconstitutionally, unlawfully, and are simply imposters. So the PPP over the weekend issued a statement to just remind everyone that yes, the government's fallen. Yes, you still have these offices. Your allegiance is to the Constitution. So follow your specific job duty and not the instruction of these illegal, because I don't even think they're considered caretaker at this point anymore.
No, they're not. They're just
Usurpers.
plain and simple illegal government.
Yeah, and I think it's a sober call by the party to issue such a statement because, I mean, you know, as a public servant, as a police officer, you know, you are generally working for the government, but you are receiving all the power that you have by the Constitution. This
Exactly.
government no longer has the power
And the
of the
commander-in-chief
Constitution.
is the president, right?
That's correct. So I think the call on the police is one that is important. Yes, you have your job to conduct, but ensure that whatever you do, the Constitution is still your mandate of how you need to act. And that's it. That's a sober call that the party would have issued. You know, that we have to have law and order in our country, but at the same time, we currently have a government that is illegitimate and that has lost its mandate to govern from the people.
Well, the Constitution has their job duties basically, so it's like what gives you the power to
Yeah.
hold this office and so forth.
Going from what you said, one about the call from the party, I'd just like to read briefly from a book written by Philip Stenning. It's called Police and Government Relations, Who's Calling the Shots? It's a very interesting book, very interesting read, and I'm going to quote directly here. In testimony before the inquiry, echoing the sentiments of Lord Denning in the Blackburn case 10 years earlier, Salisbury maintained that his duty as police commissioner was to the law, to the crown, and not to any politically elected government. So the commission in charge of, this was a commission of inquiry into police conduct and who they're taking instructions from. And the commissioner in charge of that inquiry was Madam Justice Roman Mitchell. So, Madam Justice Michelle wrote, "Of course, the paramount duty of the Commission of Police is, as is that of every citizen, to the law. The fact that a Commissioner of Police is answerable to the law and to the law alone was averted to in Lord Denning's case in R versus Commissioner of Police of the Metropolis ex parte Blackburn. That was the context of the discretion to prosecute or not to prosecute." And this is where it gets really interesting. No government can properly direct any policeman to prosecute or not to prosecute any particular person or class of persons. She went on to say that is not to say that the Commissioner of Police is in any way bound to follow governmental direction in relation to prosecution, nor should it be so. There are many other police functions in respect of which it would be unthinkable for the government to interfere. It is easier to cite examples, however she did not in the judgment, than to formulate a definition of the circumstances in which the Commissioner of Police alone should have responsibility for the operations of the police force. So essentially, what I just read to you there is that there was this case, there was this, in this book, it highlights who's really in control of the police in a country.
This was in Canada, right? It was talking between the difference. We were going through it.
Yeah.
And then what was interesting when we were actually going through this was Steve was pointing out to me that in Granger's last thing in Port Kaituma,
Yes, in
where
Port
he said
Kaituma.
someone will pay.
Yes.
And then that's where he brought in these things, pointing out how we're becoming more like a police state and so forth. And the Thursday's protest, no one had any, and no charges were given, no one was arrested. It was a peaceful protest, and yet he's calling for someone to pay.
I think we actually have a clip of the speech from the
from
illegal president,
what we're
Mr.
calling him.
Granger. So if the operator has that queued up,
Yeah,
we'll
can you
take a
just
listen.
cue up that clip, please?
I was invited by a group from civil society called the Guyana Manufacturing and Services Association. I accepted the invitation because I believe that manufacturers and business persons are important to the economy of this country. The People's Progressive Party organized a demonstration, and my Minister of Foreign Affairs, going to that meeting, they tried to turn the car over. That is hooliganism, and somebody will pay for that.
What you would have just seen is the now illegal president of our country, well, illegal president, David Granger, who was the usurper in office. What he would have been saying is that somebody is going to pay. But pay for what? When we have a fully functional police force which investigates crime, a police force that was at the protests, who observed everything that would have occurred. So what exactly is David Granger referring to? Who is going to pay?
I'd just like to point out that it was a peaceful protest outside of the Pegasus. No one was injured. What he's talking about, the former minister Karen Cummins, is a total lie. No one was arrested. There were no infractions committed at this thing. So therefore, Granger's comments on that video could be construed as instructions to the Guyana police force to take actions against citizens.
Which is most unfortunate, because the police force has its mandate to carry out.
Yeah, I'd just like to say again that no government can properly direct any policeman to prosecute or not to prosecute any particular person or class of persons. That is very important, and I think the Guyana police force ought to pay close attention to that fact.
We won't get into much into Soku or those
or
other
any other
matters,
things.
but
Actually,
we know
what we
what's
want to
been
go
going
into
on.
now is the president has promised 8 hours ago that he will be giving an address to the nation. At this point, there was no address. The statement, however, was released where an election date of March 2nd, 2020 was announced. So the address at this point wasn't there yet. It's just our operator has indicated, our producer Vanessa is now letting us know that he just released a statement. So we'll sure to examine that further and let you know more about this next week. Hopefully his address will have some more details explaining when the claims and objections and so forth will be. What's interesting about this claims and objections that we were discussing earlier is the way it's seemingly going to be done is kind of unconstitutional too.
Very interesting, because claims and objections and the updating of the National Register of Registrants is all a statutory process. It's grounded in statute. There are certain procedures that must be followed. So GCOM would have announced yesterday that they're starting claims and objections on October 1st, which is less than a week away. However, the statutory process is that from the NRR, you pull or you extract the preliminary list of electors. These are persons who are 18 years and older and eligible to vote.
At the qualifying date, which this time around
is December
31st, and elections is March 2nd.
2020. So you take the preliminary list of electors, and that needs to be published across the entire country in the official gazette and all of these things. And then you move to the claims and objection, which will run for a period of time. I think you have the facts on what can take place.
I do have some information here. 5 things that the claims and objections will allow, and once again, I can't stress this enough. It's the PPP has said that claims and objections would have allowed for everything to be done, and finally, good sense has prevailed in this country, and it has only prevailed because the party would have fought tooth and nail to ensure that the house to house was scrapped. It was a waste of time, waste of resources. They took it to court, Nalini, but the claims and objections, which the party has said from the inception, it has finally made sense. People have finally accepted that this is the method to choose.
It's sad though that everything we want, we have to take it to court for the government to listen to that.
Nalini, this is part of a country where you have people who want to just remain in power. without
Yeah,
having the necessary constitutional covering to do so. So let me explain what the claims and objections will allow. It will allow any eligible Guyanese who has reached the age of 18 years old, as Steve was saying, to be registered if their name is not on the voters list. It will allow any eligible Guyanese to get a transfer from one voting district to another in the event that they change their place of residence. If that's you, you can do this during claims and objections. It will also allow any eligible Guyanese to do a name change. If you got married, if you just changed your name,
Got divorced
if you got divorced, you can do this. The claims and objections will allow this. It will allow for the removal of a dead person from the voters list. Just ensure the death certificate is there. GCOM can facilitate this during claims and objections. It will also allow for objections to be made to the name of someone not eligible to be on the list. So if you know that your neighbor, Auntie Sandra, she's not eligible to vote at the next elections, you can ensure that her name is not on the list to vote in the next election. As the Guyanese, you have a responsibility to ensure that you get your name on the list, and any person who is eligible to be on the list can get on the list to exercise their democratic right to the next elections. You're saying, Nalini? Sorry.
No, I was saying that, but even if you go and like you don't like me, and you go and say my name shouldn't be there. There has to be documentation as to why.
You have to have,
you just can't go and
proof. You have to have proof.
Auntie Sandra don't belong here.
You have to have proof that the person is not qualified to be on the list.
I think what is important to point out here is that I think it was the fourth point that you read here, that even a person that is now deceased can be removed from the list, because I recall the now illegal president regaling us that, there are hundreds of thousands of dead persons on the list, and the only way they can be removed is with a house-to-house
But do you remember Mr. Keith Lowenfield saying that he doesn't know where the president got those numbers from?
Exactly. He was subsequently debunked by Mr. Lowenfield himself.
Who is the CEO of GCOM.
Yes, he was completely shocked that the president would make such a statement, because
maybe he was misinformed.
He should be, because by law, Mr. Keith Lowenfield is the custodian of the list, of the National Register of Registrants.
Correct.
If the president is saying that the National Register of Registrants is so corrupt, then there's a serious accusation against Mr. Lowenfield.
Yes, it is.
And I'm shocked that he took so long to come out and say this, because he knew all along that what a claims and objection can do.
Yes.
And it was not necessary for a house-to-house
Excellence Dazzle did make the point.
She is the legal advisor to GCOM.
She said that you can go to a claims and objections period. It's just that it was political manipulation by a certain group inside of GCOM that made all of this happen. But we know that a claims and objections period would have facilitated all of these things. And as a Guyanese, you will be allowed to vote in the next election once there's claims and objection. You're not on the list. You need a transfer from one district to another. You will be allowed to do this from October.
Okay, so our producer just provided us with a copy of the statement that
Great.
Mr. Granger would have taken. I think this is the most relevant parts that people want to hear now.
Yes.
Apart from what Nalini already told you, that elections would be on the 2nd of March 2020, the president said, I've complied with the Constitution. We all know where we stand on that. Totally out of sync with reality, because he has not complied with the Constitution. He also met today with the chairperson of the Guyana Elections Commission, and he's saying that we must return to the Parliament to extend the life of the Parliament. However, I'd just like to point out that the PPP's position, who's the parliamentary opposition, has said constantly that they will not be returning to the Parliament to give any extension to the government. Extending the life of the government will only give them legality over this period of unconstitutional rule and all that they have been doing, which is illegal.
Point out, though, the extension of Parliament is 3/4 of the House, all sitting members included. So they definitely need the PPP to return to Parliament to get this.
Yeah. So what they are seeking to do by getting an extension is to provide cover to their
it's 2/3, right?
Yeah, 2/3 majority, as in Article 106(7). So that's the latest updates we have from what the president has said, and I think he's very hopeful that we would give him some sort of cover from his unconstitutional rule. Sadly, that would not be forthcoming from the PPP.
No cover for them.
Yes, definitely not.
Emperor naked and
I just hope we will not have any issues with the numbers, you know. But the PPP is not going back to Parliament, so we shouldn't have any issues with the
with the
No, we-
calculations of what
just
two-thirds
just
is?
putting that out, there
No,
once again,
They might have to minus one, then
and then add. Okay.
no, it's gonna be a lot of minus because you need less.
This brings me, and what I've just read from the president is a classic example of, well, the illegal president, I
Classic
give it.
vintage Granger.
Yes.
Typical.
Classic flip-flopping of the
Oh,
president.
that's a really good.
From September 16, 2019 to date, we have seen Granger flip-flopping on several positions that he has taken. On September 16, 2019, Granger said he will act decisively on receiving advice from the Guyana Elections Commission as to its readiness to conduct general and regional elections in Guyana. Then on September 18, 2019, Granger said, I will then consider making an announcement as soon as possible afterwards. On September 16, 2019, Granger said, the Commission has an obligation to assure the public that it is ready to conduct credible elections. Then on September 18, 2019, Granger moved that goalpost once again on what constitutes readiness. He said, and I quote, GCOM has the resources and the staff, ballot papers are printed, and all these requirements are complied with under the law. So now, from saying that once GCOM advises him that they're ready to hold an elections, he will act decisively and name a date. Then he went and said that, oh, he needs to know that GCOM has ballot papers printed and these requirements are complied with under law. I think the president don't understand how an election works.
I was just gonna say
or
we
how-
need to point that out. Everyone said they know too. It's
Yeah.
the candidate list needs to be submitted. And continue. Sorry.
Yeah, clearly, what Nalini is trying to point out is that for the benefit of everyone looking, that an election works as in the president dissolves the parliament by proclamation. He then issues another proclamation naming the date. We have a date, but we don't have a proclamation as yet.
So that could change, right?
So, exactly. So as of now, we just have a date, March the 2nd, 2020, but there's no proclamation, there's no dissolution of the parliament
so it's
as
not,
yet.
like
So that is
confirmed.
not confirmed in stone.
That's correct.
These things are governed by the Constitution and
Yeah.
by statute.
Yes.
And then you have
Like
nominations day,
candidates.
and after nominations day, ballot papers are printed and all of that. So I think the president needs to read a bit more and understand how an elections is actually done. However, moving on September 19, 2019, the GCOM chairperson informed Granger that the Guyana Elections Commission will be able to deliver credible elections by the end of February 2020. We all know of this. By then, the government would have already moved into unconstitutional rule. The same day, we had statements from the US, the UK, and the EU, as one would have read from earlier, subsequently from other civil society organizations, as well as other international organizations, such as the Commonwealth, and so forth. However, these are just a few examples of Granger's flip-flopping. In all of this, in the Guyana Chronicle report published on September 20th, 2019, Granger said, my government has complied with the orders of the court at all times. It has acted correctly, in good faith, and in accordance with the guidelines laid down by the constitutional conventions. These are all just lies.
Yes.
Everyone knew that, or knows, or ought to know, that at every turn they have frustrated the court orders.
Yes.
They have failed to comply with the court orders.
Yes,
And-
it is indeed true.
Well, he has been flip-flopping his entire
Mhm.
administration.
Mhm.
He even said he'll follow the Constitution now and all too, which he's clearly not doing because he's supposed to dissolve Parliament and make an actual proclamation.
Exactly.
But and then asking and then demanding of the PPP to go back to Parliament is not following what the CCJ had said to him.
So basically, their line has been all along that GCOM will advise me.
Mhm.
You know, when they, and people have been saying now, oh, you know, we have to ensure now that GCOM is always able to move swiftly for an election.
But GCOM has a 3-month timeline.
Yes,
you know,
but have
and
they
it's
have they
6 months.
forgotten that we had the prorogation and then we had elections soon after?
Then
It is
71
as though as
Mhm.
people
71 days
forget
after.
Yeah.
that GCOM has been in this position
They've
before.
been able to pull snap elections
And
before.
GCOM, as Steve would have been pointed out all along, Roodi, he has been saying that GCOM the staff that made up that time frame was the technical staff from GCOM. So when I hear people making these arguments that GCOM, oh, we now have to train staff, and we have to ensure that the timelines are suited, and all these things, what I'm saying is that we currently have the structure in place right now. Changing the structure will not change the integrity of the politicians that were in government.
No.
Right? The reason why we have not been able to have elections, and Guyanese need to know this, is because we have people in power that do not honor the Constitution. They are full usurpers, and all they care about is power and getting benefits for themselves.
And the thing is too, as Steve just pointed out, is that he didn't do a proclamation. He just said when the date would be. It's like a promissory note, kind of like you say to a girl, oh, I'm going to take you out and never
exactly. And he said this to the press earlier today as well. I'm just going to quote from a newsroom article here where they quoted the president directly, him saying, "The dissolution of parliament will occur when I am satisfied that the entire process as required by the Elections Commission can move without obstruction on to the date the chairman herself has nominated."
Yeah.
This very statement leaves me convinced that the president does not understand how the election should be in Ghana.
If you continue that statement, he says, "I have not dissolved parliament. It will remain in session until I hope this evening I'll be able to make a public announcement on the date." At the point when he made the public announcement, he didn't dissolve parliament, and parliament technically is in existence, but they have fallen, so they cannot meet. But he needs to officially dissolve it so he can then proclaim elections and we can move forward.
All the while he's saying that I'm still compliant with the Constitution, even up to now, even up to date. There's been 7 days now. I think one of you guys pointed out that it's been 7 days now since we've been on the unconstitutional rule. 7 days onwards, and the president, Mr. Granger, do forgive me, refer to him as president. He still thinks that he's, protected by the Constitution, and Guyana is as usual.
His copy is different from ours. I'm very convinced of that. This is very.
Yeah. So as we pointed out, while the president says that the date will be the 2nd of March 2020, there are certain legal process that must take place before that is set in stone. So as of now, what we have is, like Nalini said, we just have a promissory note, and from what I've just pointed out, from how the president flip-flop all the time, I won't be surprised if this would be changed and just move to something else by the end of next week.
Okay. Roodi, we have to wait and see. But in the meantime, we have continued to receive complaints from the citizens about the hardships that are facing Guyanese in different communities all across Guyana, all 10 administrative regions. We've been receiving complaints from, and complaints also about the failures in delivering services to communities. So we just want to highlight a few.
Okay, yeah, so one of the things we've been getting a lot of complaints about are NDCs needing more assistance and support from central and regional governments to provide infrastructure and services. So the NDCs that are, if you remember last local government, the PPP has won most of the NDCs. So those NDCs, they're seeing funding being cut or slowed down, or they're requesting or fixing a road here or a bridge broke here, something like that they're requesting assistance with. And central government is taking a really long time. The RDCs are giving them a hard time. They're getting the royal runaround, and no one seems to give a flying flamingo about any of these NDCs. So that is what's been happening there.
So we should call on all the actors that have control of these services to ensure that they do what's right by the NDC. In the meantime, we've also seen that crime rates have gone up. I was most saddened to hear about the passing of Mr. Denbo. He would have been attacked in his home. And we would have seen a number of other incidences like this.
Actually, one of our fellow media colleague, which I worked with in the media, the Guyana Chronicle, his father suffered a similar fate. He was attacked and robbed at his home, and he subsequently passed away. Yes, so my condolences to all those people and their families.
So we have seen that the crime rates have been going up, and I would like to appeal, although we're discussing a lot of politics, but I would like to appeal to fellow Guyanese. If you have any information regarding any of these criminal activities that would have occurred. If you have any information, just ensure that you report it to the nearest police station to ensure that we can assist our brothers and sisters in getting justice.
I'd just like to say one thing quickly before we move on into the issues affecting Guyanese. The recent charade of police and riot squad all around the place, who's clearly taking instructions from the president, these are resources that can be deployed to help ordinary citizens who are suffering from high crime rate across the country. And we know that the Minister of Public Security continues to deny that the crime rate is not high, but the realities on the ground are far different. Far different. That leads me into another complaint that the People's Progressive Party has been receiving on the ground, is that joblessness is on the rise. So we have a high rate of employment, especially in regions 2, 3, 5, and 6 among young people. I'd just like to refer quickly to the statement by the, I think she is the chairman of the PNC, Ms. Valda Lawrence, who said, the only friends I got is PNC, so the only people I could give work to is PNC. So we tend to know why is it that
Didn't she also want
we're in such a problem. Yes, a doctor who holds a PNC card.
But he spoke Spanish or something weird of the sort she was saying.
She was saying that I have a vacancy for a doctor that knows Portuguese, but the only doctor I will give the job to is one that holds a PNC card. Yeah. So essentially, young people just hold out. We have spoken a lot about the promises of the PPP and what they intend to do. Just bear with us, and jobs will be coming.
March will be here soon.
The March will be here very soon. It's no need to worry or despair.
We can march them out then.
It's really.
So we have also seen that local transportation has gone up, and we've seen the VAT on hinterland airfare and freight, and the cost of living has also skyrocketed under the tenure of this government. Now the APNUAFC said that they would have removed VAT from 54 areas, 54 areas of 54 flight airstrips, yes, but only Cameron. Cameron is the only airstrip that is used regularly that would have really benefited. So when they say that they have removed it from 54,
essentially
54
just
areas,
one.
essentially it's just one that has really benefited. And we've seen cost of living continue to increase. And the man in the street, the person who's selling at the side of the road, everyone is now complaining about the cost of living and how the hardships have been here. But it is as though when you say these things, persons are just saying, oh, you just hate this government. But no, it's that people are actually experiencing hardships in this country. The cost of living is going up. Prices for commodities in the market is going up. And our income is not going up and accompanying it.
Exactly.
It is because of the taxes that we're being faced with. Right? And all of these different things that we have to cope with as Guyanese people. And the government has taken away welfare from us. They're not giving us jobs and opportunities like we would have had before. And this is what we're faced with. Cost of living is just continuing to increase. So we know what we have to do come next year, March. We know what we have to do.
I just want to go into the area specific that we got a few complaints about. So in Industry Plaisance, there is a drainage and garbage collection. We'd like to point out that NEC is PNC controlled. We actually lost there by 1 vote. Bandits are riding around, youths riding around on bicycles and beating up and robbing people day and night. The roads are poor conditions. The access dams to the agricultural road lands are in complete dismay, and there's no street lights. And in More Hope, they have the same road problem where they've asked central government for funding to fix these. They're having problems with the drainage, cleaning of the drainage trenches, garbage once again, and the crime is on the rise as everyone has been pointing out, and there's no jobs for the people there. So that is some of the problems in some of the area specifics.
I'd also like to go to the hinterland regions as well, where we have mass revocations of mining grants.
Yes.
And these, when I say mining grants, I don't mean like these huge companies and friends and cronies of the coalition government, talking about people, small-scale miners like the Amerindians and those who live in those regions that would have been given grants to mine in those areas under the previous PVC administration. The government is just revoking these willy-nilly. Also, the operation cost has gone up for the mining, which forces small miners to stop their operation. So apart from those whose grants are being revoked, you also have the cost,
Yes.
which are going up as well, because the coalition government placed VAT on these machinery and equipment which they would have used. As you said, the flights into the interior and on air freight. So if they, when they have to take their goods into the interior for their workmen, it's more cost to them. And a lot of these small miners are not making millions of dollars as everyone would think. So it's very hard for them out there. These
So do
miners.
we want to? We're just gonna go over a few promises that we have. From
I
TP.
want to go over a very popular one, and I just want to
Yeah.
address this. Reverse the 2 a.m. curfew. We were on social media. We've seen a lot of comments being made. How does the PPP expect to attract people by reversing the 2 a.m. curfew?
Actually, it's interesting you say that. I was at a function on the weekend, and someone brought, that was kind of a low move of you guys to do, say reverse 2 a.m. And I'm like, but won't it be something that you think business would benefit from? And we're
Exactly. I
talking
think
about
everyone keeps missing that vital.
that a lot
point
of places
it.
like Gravity got shut down, Jerry's, all these places closed down because of the 2 a.m. curfew.
That's correct, and that's exactly the point I was trying to make.
So-
So, no, that's
All
all
right,
right.
tell
That's
me,
all
tell
right.
me your point.
No, I mean, reversing the 2 a.m. curfew. First, we heard that it was because of noise and nuisance, but that has not affected, or it has not eradicated the noises that would have been.
That's
and
what-
we also see that it is only certain businesses which really are affected by this 2 a.m. curfew. So removing the 2 a.m. curfew is not just to encourage party life, it is to encourage business
As well.
operation, to encourage enterprise, because as persons are out, businesses will benefit.
Yeah.
We see a lot of hot dog stands, burger joints being open,
Exactly.
chicken run and this and that, and
But
all the rest
Jerry's
of it
has been there
being
for
open.
how many decades? And that
Yes.
shut down because they lost.
It's also a form of view of mine that the government should not direct people what to do in their personal life.
Yes.
That's
That's
another
an
view.
overreach too,
That's
I think.
another
Yeah, I
view.
think it's a very
So we just have
overreaching.
to
Big
we just
brother
have to say that the 2 a.m. curfew is not just to promote party life, which is
Exactly.
people are free to party. Why not? Why should people be
But
barred
it
from
generates
partying?
revenue.
But it generates revenue in the economy.
And
we have
more
to,
importantly, all these businesses would pay tax at the end of the fiscal
come
quarter.
on.
So
So
then the
that's more
government
money
is
for the
there.
government. It's
Exactly,
more
and
money
they
for the
won't have to
government.
tax us more
And
by
as the-
implementing
Exactly.
200
as the
new
government
measures.
gets more money, we get to benefit more from
because they do more
projects.
for people.
Exactly.
Exactly. And
So people are missing the linking
They're
and
missing the big
linkages,
picture.
and they're missing the big picture
like
as
the
well
government,
of wealth.
sadly.
You have some more points you guys want to go for?
I just wanted to point out that one of the things that we've been constantly parroting is that will ensure revenue from oil and gas is not squandered and stolen and leads to the improvement of lives to better all Guyanese. That's very important because we need to remind people that there was a doubt of where there was an $18 million bonus, where they claimed that there was no
Yes.
bonus, and then it came back, and it was a whole hidden agenda.
Now,
And-
basically, they tried to stole the foresight of all money we got.
Yes,
Yeah.
so
And that's the
Steve is gonna
crux and crux of it. I'd
Really?
just like to point out also quickly that as I was speaking about the hinterland, that the taxes, there will be an immediate removal of those taxes that was placed on mining equipment and agricultural equipment. So those persons in the hinterland, you can look forward to that with the new PPC administration in office, as well as a range of those other measures that were put in place being reversed. For example, the 200 new taxes and fees increases that are affecting the cost of living, as you were speaking about one, will be reversed as soon as possible, as soon as the PPP takes office.
Yes,
That's
so-
one of their campaign promises.
So I'm also seeing that there will be the removal of restriction on used tires. Now,
Mhm.
the other day I was traveling and I saw, a gentleman was speaking to me and he was saying that, this government really get me vexed when they put this price down on new tires, that I gotta buy a new tire every time.
Mhm.
But and he was complaining because as he has to buy new tires, he's saying that the roads ain't being fixed. So how they want me buy new tires and they ain't fixing up the roads and damage my rims and all the rest of it. So there will be a complete reversal on that. if you're watching and you would have been affected by this, I know hundreds of thousands of Guyanese would have been affected by this because we have a lot of cars
Yes, we do.
in the country. Maybe it looks sometimes like more vehicles than people that we have. But there will be a complete reversal on the restriction on used tires. So people will be able to benefit once again from buying used tires and so on.
As the program progresses and we get closer and closer into the election period, there will be more. We will be talking more about the PPP and the vast promises and other initiatives that they would have contained within the manifesto in the coming weeks. So that's something you guys can look forward to as well. And there will be a user-friendly version of the manifesto being released very soon. Now that we have
Actual date.
a date, I won't say an actual date, but now that we have something to look forward
Well,
to.
we need to remember that March 2nd, 2020 is just a date,
Mhm.
not a proclamation. No proclamation was issued, so it's just a promise out there.
Yes, just promised by
A leaf in the wind.
the illegal president that we would have elections by March.
On March
2nd.
2nd, 2020.
Okay, and that's a Monday. That's why I was just checking.
Yeah,
this.
no, it is a Monday.
It's a Monday. It's
It
Monday.
is- It's the
Okay.
first Monday after the last.
Okay, so
year.
our producer is telling us that we are almost out of time. But as usual, if you want to see or read more of what we would have discussed this evening and other issues that affect you and your families, your communities, your nation, you can remember to pick up a copy of the Mirror newspaper in your community. Yeah.
And if reading really isn't your thing, you can be reminded that if you missed any parts of this program, you can come back to the page and watch it. So the page is This Week in 60 Minutes. You can watch it anytime. You can share with your neighbors, friends, and families, those that don't really want to read too much, or if they want to do both.
Yes.
Also, as it regards to the Mirror, you can get a copy every Monday morning on the Facebook page, which is Weekend Mirror
Yes.
Facebook. So you can like that page and you would get a free copy on there as well of the Mirror newspaper.
Thanks.
Additionally, I'd just like to remind everyone, as Nalini pointed out, that that Granger never said that March 2nd is the definitive date, because as she pointed out, he hasn't issued a proclamation saying that this is the definitive date. So I already spoke about his flip-flopping, so we have to be very careful with that and don't get too
Watchful of
excited.
that.
Yes, and don't get too excited. Also, this afternoon, the leader of the opposition has said that the PPP is not going back to Parliament to give legal cover to the government. So that is also very important.
Yes.
There will be no extension of the life of this illegal government. We also spoke about several other issues affecting Guyanese in their local communities. Some of those, one pointed out that the high cost of living and mining in the problems affecting small miners, revocation of their leases and all of this. So at this juncture, we'd just like to thank you all for being with us for the last hour or so.
Yes.
Hope you guys can join us next week. Have a good evening and good night.
Good night. Thank you.
See you.